coming out here, for your patience. Did take a little bit longer than originally scheduled and planned, but that's a good indicator because we wanted as thorough of a visit to the ICE detention center here in California City as we could get. Senator Alex Padilla, for the record, joined by
Senator Adam Schiff. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, and it was important for us to come out here for a couple of reasons. Look, today marks the first anniversary of the second Trump administration. And if there's two takeaways from this first year, one is economic chaos and uncertainty that so many working families across the country are feeling. And the second, clearly, is the cruelty of a mass deportation agenda, which has included a lot of indiscriminate detentions, arrests, even deportations, many without due process. The whole country is well aware of the scenes happening, not just in Minneapolis as we speak, but elsewhere in the country. It began here in California, particularly the Los Angeles area became sort of a test case. We've seen Chicago and Portland and North Carolina, other regions of the country, in terms of what's happening in communities. But we've increasingly been hearing from constituents, from families of folks who have been detained, about concerns of the conditions in a lot of these facilities. And so that's what prompted the visit today.
So I think we've all seen so much trauma that's happened around the country with these indiscriminate immigration raids, the heartbreak, the families separated from one another, the loss of life as we saw in Minneapolis. That's one trauma. When you walk inside these walls, you experience a different trauma. You get to see what happens to folks who are apprehended by ICE. As far as I can tell, the vast majority of the folks in this detention facility have no prior criminal history. Many of them that we spoke with were picked up at their immigration appointments. So they were doing what they were supposed to do to become citizens or establish a lawful presence. And at those appointments, they were picked up, separated from family. We talked to wives separated from husbands and separated from their kids. And I think the most frequent feedback we got was the inadequacy of the medical care that they were receiving. I spoke with one woman who is diabetic. It was on her intake form. She's been here for 2 months and has yet to receive treatment for her diabetes. That is very frightening. And others with other serious medical conditions that have not been attended to. And a lot of the concerns we heard were over, very valid healthcare issues that were not being addressed. The staff here has acknowledged there have been gaps, and as this facility has grown in the number of detainees, there have been, as we could hear today, any number of problems. This facility is expected to grow further in terms of population. There are about 1,400 people here now. It has a capacity of about 2,500. And I think they expect to use that capacity. So they're going to have to do something very different if they're going to meet the medical needs of the people here, let alone adding another 1,000 people.
And the standards required by law. So that was certainly a topic of conversation with the warden and the staff. The last thing I'll mention, and then we'll open it up to some questions, is in terms of access to medical care, it's not just the physical care that they need, whether they've sustained an injury, whether they have a chronic health condition, or one develops while they're here. And for the record, this is civil detention. This is not a prison, despite the environment. But the equal concern for mental health care. A lot of folks, as they first entered into custody, had some sort of condition. You can imagine the experience of being detained, being threatened with deportation, the impact on you as an individual, the impact on your extended family can be traumatic. We found that mental health care also lacking and we're demanding and insisting on improvement.
Gentlemen, how would you describe the actual conditions in which people are living here? Is this dormitory style? Are they individuals in individual bunks, individual cells? How are these 1,400 people being housed in here?
Yeah. Well, just sort of high level, to start with, separation, men in one section, women in another section. Second, the point I'm making, when you're in ICE custody, it's a civil detention. It's an immigration related case. These are not folks that have been found guilty and therefore in stage 1, 2, 3 level of a state or federal prison in this case. What are the conditions like? They look a lot more like a prison than a dormitory style setting. There is separation based on what ICE will determine level of risk, of danger to themselves or to others. Very different than what I've seen touring other facilities over the years.
Just to add, well, they're separated into what they call pods, but I think they basically look like a cell block. And so in a pod, there would be either 80 or 85 people in a pod. The pods would have tables in the middle. They would be surrounded by the cells. There would be 2 per cell. There is an area that we also visited, which they call administrative segregation. We would call it isolation or solitary. They're the same structure of a pod, except there's nobody in the common area. They're all isolated, one person to a cell. And there's some other small differences in those cells. They have a larger glass window for observation, but that's the fundamental structure.
Adequacy of the food, how often they're fed, frequently, any problems with the meals or anything else they're fed?
Well, we've heard a number of reports that the water they drink smells bad. There have been public reports of mold in the water. We heard from detainees who said there was mold in their food. One described a salami or bologna sandwich that was moldy. Many described getting stomach aches from drinking the water here. That was some of the feedback we received on the food.
Senator Padilla, what has DHS, were you able to talk with DHS officials who are running the facility itself, told them about what the inmates, the people who are being detained here are saying? What have they said about how they're going to improve the quality of at least staying here as long as they are here?
Look, sadly, we've got a lot of, we're working on making it better. We're working on making it better, whether it's something as simple as the food, whether it's the temperature, whether it's the medical attention. So I'm living here even more concerned than I was when I arrived. And to underscore the point, if the administration is true to their word, the population here is only going to grow. So the need to address nutrition, medical attention, mental health care, all the above is only going to grow.
No assurance.
Senators,
there have been. We know that people from LA are ending up here. Are you concerned about that? Them being so far away from the city, access to counsel, family. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that is absolutely a concern, not just for people from within the state of California that have to travel long distances maybe to see a family member, but I've met a number of detainees here from elsewhere in the country, from other regions of the country. So that access to their counsel prior and certainly to their family member is only exacerbated with that effect. So that's part of the follow-up that we have. Why are people being sent here from other states? And we also hear reports of people from California being sent to other states.
You're saying improvements need to be made.
There have been,
Of the DHS appropriation.
there have been now 6 deaths in custody just so far this year in the last 3 weeks. And I think the number was 32 last year, which was a high.
Yeah, that was a record high.
You talked about concerns about health care. You talked about standards, legal standards, or at least ICE's standards. How do you see getting those enforced? And just speak to the death issue a little bit.
Well, in terms of getting the standards enforced to make sure that they're being upheld, that requires oversight. And, it should be more than just the 2 of us coming out to a detention facility without the power of a subpoena. Congress should hold hearings on the conditions in these detention facilities. We should be, fully investigating the deaths that are reported to find out, were these preventable, what were the circumstances. There really ought to be vigorous oversight by like so much else going on right now, whether it's the shooting of Ms. Good in Minneapolis, There's going to be no investigation of that, apparently. Only an investigation of her family, but not of the circumstances in which she was shot and killed. And I think it's fair to say, likewise, there's very little appetite among our colleagues, our Republican colleagues, to do oversight of detention facilities. What happens with them? How do we hold them to account? Senator Padilla asked the staff here, you say things are improving, that you're filling the gaps. What kind of metrics can you offer us? How can you show us? And short answer is we don't have any way to measure whether things are getting better or worse. We're getting feedback from those who are detained here. We're getting obviously a very different view from those who are on the staff here and with ICE. And we ought to do a lot more as a Congress to get to the truth.
Hold on. Let me just add to that prior question, because I do think it's important to recognize it isn't just the two of us. There's a number of the California Congressional delegation, House members, who have individually and in pairs or small teams visited a number of facilities, including this one, over the several months. I think what we're trying to underscore here is the Republican majority in Congress, both the House and the Senate, is failing, absolutely failing, or refusing to live up to their oversight responsibility to hold a separate but co-equal branch of government accountable. So if our questions will not be responded to in hearings back in Washington, D.C., if our formal inquiries at the top levels of the administration won't be responded to, then we'll have to continue to do the in-person oversight on our own as part of everything that we can do to improve conditions to lawful standards and hold this administration accountable. Another thing that's important to note, I don't know if this makes it better, I think it actually makes it worse. This is a private-run facility, right? This is a contractor-run facility. It'd be different if it was an actual federal department or agency that was running the facility. But that notwithstanding, our job remains the same.
We'll have Nikki from Fox. Guys, please, some order. We'll have Nikki next.
So, both of you, if you say improvements need to be made to this facility, do you approve of the DHS appropriations bill that was released this morning, or will you support it?
I don't plan on supporting it because at first review, and it was released just before we arrived here today, I have yet to see any additional sort of guardrails or protections language in that measure that would keep all the DHS activity that I've seen out of policy, out of control. We want to rein it in, and I haven't seen that yet.
And I just add that, and I feel very much the same way. This is not a problem of lack of money. ICE has been given in that reconciliation bill tens of billions of dollars, $87 billion. There's no shortage of resources. They have more money than the military of a lot of countries around the world. What is lacking, I think, in terms of ICE around the country are standards to be held accountable to, and a willingness to hold folks to account for meeting those standards. But this is not a resource issue. They've got a ton of money, and the question is, how are they using that money? How much of that money is being wasted, and how much of that money is going into these indiscriminate raids or militarizing our cities in a way that make people less safe, not more?
And let me just wrap up. Let me just wrap up by saying sort of the bigger picture here. Our nation's immigration laws are outdated. They need to be modernized. The whole system needs to be modernized. We agree we need a safe, secure, humane, and orderly border. We need to modernize how people who want to try to come to the United States are considered for that. We need to do justice by the millions of immigrants who have been in the United States for long, long periods of time without criminal convictions. They deserve a pathway towards legalization and eventual citizenship. But as we apply the laws as they currently exist, they have to be done within policy. It has to be done within the letter of the law. It has to be done with respect to civil rights, due process rights, and the Constitution, and that's what we're here to do.
Final question for Wendy. Final question for Wendy here, please.
Talk to today, and the woman that you talked to, that was today, that has diabetes and hasn't gotten treatment. You talked to her just now. And also, do you guys think that the conditions are being kept in a certain way to encourage people to accept a voluntary deportation?
That's been a concern of mine, frankly, coming here, even before getting here. That is, people are so worn down, and they feel like they're in prison, and many of them have committed no crime, apart from being here undocumented. And yes, I think you're going to find people who decide, I'm just not going to fight it anymore. The appeal is going to take too long. This is just, too oppressive an environment. That is very much a concern. And, if you add to that people having trouble getting the health care they need or having access to their family. But I am most particularly concerned about the medical issue because that can be life or death. We talked to others who needed treatment, and if they didn't get their treatment, it was going to degenerate their health condition in a way that they would never get that health care back, that health back. So this has long-term consequence on people and on their mental health. We talked to one detainee from Afghanistan who worked with the Marines in Afghanistan. They want to deport him back to Afghanistan. He was explaining to us that he is going to be a target of the Taliban the moment he steps back in Afghanistan. He's given alternatives like Sudan and elsewhere that he has no tie whatsoever. These are the stories that we were hearing.
Gentlemen, you talk about metrics absolutely on doing this and on
Sorry guys, we're just
maintaining
going to do a
quality.
staggered remarks and then we're going to wrap up.
About how many people did you get to talk to in there?
Brevemente en español. Mi nombre es Alex Padilla, aquí con mi colega el senador Adam Schiff, visitando este centro de detención en California City. Hemos visto este último año la violencia con cual esta administración está tratando de detener y deportar tantos inmigrantes en todas las áreas del país, la gran mayoría sin récord criminal. Pero es igual de importante que nosotros vengamos a sitios como este para ver en qué condiciones están detenidos tantos inmigrantes mientras que están esperando su oportunidad de luchar por sus derechos y sus familias y legalización.
All right, thank you guys. We have to wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you.